There is a particular kind of silence people carry with them. It looks calm from the outside, composed, sometimes even cheerful. But if you look closer, if you pay attention to the rhythm of someone's voice, to the way they smile at the wrong moment, to the slight delay before they say, "I'm fine," you can feel something else beneath it. A quiet tension, barely visible but unmistakable once you notice it. It's the tension of someone holding themselves together with both hands, hoping no one sees the cracks. This is where our story begins. Not with drama, not with confession, but with that almost invisible pause. The moment a person decides that the truth might be too heavy, too complicated, too revealing, and so they set it aside, just for now. They straighten their posture. They shift their tone. They lift a mask that has been worn so many times it almost feels like skin. And if you've ever sensed this pause in someone else, or recognized it in yourself, then this topic is already closer than comfort allows. Because today we're exploring a simple but unsettling question. Why do people pretend they're fine when they're anything but fine? What forces inside us shape that smile, that steady voice, that well-rehearsed reassurance that everything is under control? And what happens to a person when hiding becomes a habit rather than a moment? The answer is rarely one thing. It's a quiet stack of experiences, memories, fears, and lessons learned long before a person realizes they're learning them. But to understand any of it, we need to step into the small scenes where this pattern reveals itself. Imagine a friend who always turns pain into a joke. There's a sharpness to the humor, a hint of truth underneath it. People laugh, the moment softens, and the conversation moves on. But something stays with you, the feeling that the joke wasn't a joke at all, but a shield thrown into the air at the very second vulnerability tried to surface. Or picture a coworker who never complains. Not once. Even on the days when the weight on their shoulders is almost visible, they shrug it off with a calm. It's all good. You want to believe them. You almost do. But the way they exhale when no one is watching tells a different story. And then there are the people who look like they control everything. The steady ones, the reliable ones, the ones who keep the world around them from falling apart. They move through life with a quiet certainty. But if you sit with them long enough, if you listen carefully, you might notice how tightly they hold that control. As if letting go for even a moment would expose everything they've been trying not to feel. Scenes like these are everywhere. They pass unnoticed because they're so familiar. Because so many of us have learned to do the very same thing. Underneath these moments lies the psychology of emotional masking, a set of deep, automatic patterns that shape how a person presents themselves to the world. Part defense, part habit, part fear of vulnerability. The mask does not begin as deception. It begins as protection. A way of surviving situations where showing pain once felt unsafe or unwanted. Maybe someone learned early in life that expressing sadness only made things worse. Maybe they grew up being told to be strong. Not because anyone meant harm, but because vulnerability made the adults around them uncomfortable. Maybe they learned that their own emotional needs were an inconvenience, a burden, something to be tucked away quietly so others could remain at ease. Over time, the lesson becomes a reflex. Smile. Stay composed. Don't show the weight. Don't make anyone worry. And the more a person masters this behavior, the more invisible their suffering becomes, even to themselves. But behind emotional masking is something more fragile, a fear that if the truth were visible, people might pull away. That needing support makes someone weak. That asking for help exposes flaws they've tried their entire life to hide. These beliefs do not come from logic. They come from old wounds, from childhood moments when emotional needs went unanswered or misunderstood. They settle in the subconscious and shape behavior long before a person realizes the pattern is repeating. So when they say, "I'm fine," it's not a lie meant to mislead. It's a shield meant to protect a part of them that never learned how to be seen safely. As we move deeper, you might start noticing this pattern in familiar places. In the way someone changes the subject when a conversation gets too close. In the way they rush to help others so no one stops to ask how they themselves are doing. In the way they retreat into silence when their internal world becomes too loud. These are subtle behaviors, but they reveal something profound. Hiding pain becomes easier than acknowledging it. It becomes automatic. It becomes identity. And yet there is a cost. A quiet erosion that happens slowly, almost imperceptibly. When a person wears a mask long enough, they start to lose track of where the mask ends and they begin. Emotions blur. Needs become confused. The internal world becomes a place they avoid rather than inhabit. They learn to cope, but not to heal. This brings us to the deeper layers, the psychological roots that shape all of this. Many people who pretend they're fine grew up in environments where emotional expression came with risk. Perhaps their caretakers were overwhelmed, unpredictable, or emotionally unavailable. Perhaps vulnerability was met with dismissal or discomfort. So the child adapts, they become the easy one, the strong one, the quiet one. They learn to show only the parts of themselves that make others feel at ease. These childhood adjustments become adult habits. And while the world sees composure, inside there is a person who has never been fully allowed to need anything. As they move through life, this internal split becomes a quiet burden. They are praised for being dependable, admired for their strength, appreciated for their stability. But these compliments reinforce the mask rather than the person behind it. They teach the individual that their value lies in how little space they take up emotionally, how well they manage everything on their own. This is where the deepest conflict emerges, the tension between wanting to be seen and fearing the consequences of being seen. The longing for understanding sits side by side with the fear of exposure. It is a lonely place to live, and yet it is a place many people carry with them every day. Eventually, there comes a moment, a pivot point so quiet it can pass unnoticed. It's not dramatic. It doesn't come with tears or confession. It often arrives in the smallest of interactions. Maybe someone asks, "Are you sure you're okay?" And the question lingers a little too long. Maybe they hear themselves say, "I'm fine," and feel a strange disconnect, as if the words no longer match their own internal reality. Maybe they begin to sense the exhaustion that comes from holding everything together for too long. And suddenly, without fanfare, they recognize the pattern. They see how reflexive the mask has become. How many years they've spent proving they're strong by pretending they're unbreakable. How deeply they've hidden the parts of themselves that needed compassion the most. This recognition is the quiet turning point. The moment when a person realizes that strength is not the absence of need, but the willingness to acknowledge it. From here, the narrative becomes softer, slower. The viewer begins to see themselves not as someone who must fix anything, but as someone who can simply notice. Notice the small hesitations before they say, "I'm fine." Notice the moments when they retreat instead of reaching out. Notice the internal voice that tells them to stay silent, to stay strong, to stay small. This part is not advice. It's not a call to action. It's a gentle invitation to understand the truth of what's happening inside. To recognize that emotional masking is not failure. It is a response to old conditions that no longer apply. And when a person begins to see these patterns clearly, something shifts. Not dramatically, but quietly. They begin to hear their own emotional signals with greater clarity. They see the people around them with more compassion. They stop taking, "I'm fine," at face value, in themselves and in others. They become someone who notices the unseen weight people carry, someone who listens to what is not said. By the time we reach the final moments of this reflection, the tone grows even more gentle. The mask is not torn away, not forced off, but simply allowed to soften. The viewer is left with the understanding that vulnerability is not a danger but a doorway. That emotional honesty is not a burden but a bridge. And so we end quietly, with the truth that many people live their entire lives without hearing. Sometimes the strongest person in the room is the one who finally whispers, "I need help." Not because they are weak, but because, for the first time, they have allowed themselves to be human.